Hi everyone, welcome to chapter 2. Now we're going to move into where things start to get real. In chapter 1, we talked about what health promotion is. Now we're going to shift into how we actually start designing programs. And I'll tell you now, this is where a lot of people realize that good intentions don't create good programs. Planning does. So, what are we actually going to be learning here? Well, we're going to focus on why planning matters, how to get buy-in from decision makers, and who should be involved in planning, and what constraints or parameters shape programs. Think of this as the foundation for everything you'll build later. If you don't get this part right, everything else that follows is going to be harder. So let's start with one of the most important ideas from this chapter, the program rationale. This is essentially your argument for why your program should exist, not your idea, not your opinion, your justification. And who are you trying to convince? Well, decision makers. And these are people who control your funding, your resources, and yes, approval. So if your rationale isn't really good, your program might never leave the ground. So let's be very clear here. Nothing actually happens without decision maker support. You may have the best program idea in the world, but if leadership doesn't support it, it's not going to happen. So your job as a planner is not just to design a program, it's to show how your program actually achieves organizational goals. You're aligning their priorities with your program. Now, there's no perfect formula for writing this great rationale, but there is a logical structure, and it's described as an inverted triangle. And what this means is you start very broad, and then you narrow to your specific population and solution. If you start too narrow too quickly, you lose people. If you stay broad, your program never gets action. So this is the full process I want you to follow. I want you to see it. So you define the program broadly, narrow it to your population, propose a solution, show its benefits, and explain why it will work. This is persuasion using evidence, not opinion, not guesses, evidence-based persuasion. The first thing you need to do is gather background information, and this is where many students underestimate the process. You have to start with a literature review. That means you need to understand what we already know and what data supports the problem you're trying to solve. Because if you can't prove that a problem exists, well, then you can't justify a program. Here, we need to understand that it's more than just statistics. You actually need to know what the population needs, what they want, and how the problem specifically affects them. And here's the key part. You also need to align your program with what decision makers care about, because even strong data won't matter if it doesn't connect back to the initial priorities. Here's where your evidence might come from. And notice there's not just health data. You've got epidemiological data, economic data like costs and benefits, and return on investment, because decision makers often want to know what is the value of this program. So yes, health matters, but so does cost and impact. After that, we actually get to start writing. And the key idea here is to start big and then narrow. Introduce the topic on a large scale, national or global. Then you connect it to your specific population. And this is where you create your problem statement, which clearly defines what needs are going to be addressed with your program or intervention. This is where the problem statement is where everything has to be crystal clear. Why is this a problem? And more importantly, why does it need to be addressed now? And here's something I actually love, social math. That means turning statistics into something meaningful. For example, instead of saying 20% of individuals are affected, you say 1 in 5 is affected. Same data, more powerful message. As you finish the rationale, we're starting to bring it home. You're going to propose your solution, explain the benefits, and most importantly, show why it will work, because decision makers are always thinking, is this worth the investment? And including references. That shows you did your homework. Now let's shift into who actually helps you do this work. Well, that's the planning committee. This is not optional. A strong committee brings multiple perspectives, identifies blind spots, and helps us generate ideas. If one person plans everything, you can almost be guaranteed that something important is going to be left out. Here we can see what a strong committee might look like. You need representatives of your population. These are people who can actually do things, like influencers and leadership. You don't want just warm bodies in a chair and in a room. It's about strategic representation. Who sits at the table matters, really matters. So now we move into constraints, or as we all call them, planning parameters. Before anything begins, you need to know what health leadership or what leadership believes about health programs and what resources are they willing to fully commit, because your program must fit within those limits. This continues with organizational culture. Who has access to the program and what authority do you have as a planner? These are the boundaries you are working within. And here's the reality. Your ideal program is not always your real program. So we come back to the core idea that you must justify your program. Not just say that it's needed, prove it. Align it with values, outcomes, and return on investment. This just helps reinforce the process that I just talked about. It's important to gather data, define the problem, build your rationale, and support it with evidence. Remember, it's systematic, it's intentional, it is not random. And finally, planning is not a solo activity. We like to think we're in control, but you must work with others, engage stakeholders, and build strategic partnerships, because successful programs require collaboration at all levels.